James is on the line.
Recording.
James.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We're calling the meeting of the February Planning Committee to order at what, 12:01? I would, you'll take the roll call on the. Okay, because there's a few of us. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I wouldn't.
James, how do you feel about seconding?
I'll second it.
Okay. And the agenda is approved. Do we have anybody online for participation? It does not look like. Okay. So. Did somebody just come on? Yeah.
Sure.
Seeing no one interested in public participation, I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I'm sure I've reviewed the minutes and I have moved to approve.
I'll second them. I have read them myself as well.
Okay, let's get the ball rolling. Go to old business. Nate, that's you, ED renovation.
Madam Chair, thank you for the ED renovation project. First, I want to talk about the status of the design effort. The conceptual floor plan layout for the ED, I'm happy to announce is complete at this point. We've gone through several iterations of stakeholder meetings with our local stakeholder group. This would include the design team, CBJ engineering, and members of the various impacted departments, including nursing and physician representation. And we're ready to move forward towards 65% completion. Right now, we're anticipating design 65%, probably in the late spring. But we'll keep the planning committee, keep the board updated on our progress there. Next, I want to talk about the certificate of need. I distributed a draft amended certificate of need to our engineering and design team and internal project team on January 24th. I've received initial comments and feedback and Kim and I are actually scheduled, hopefully we can meet today, to just discuss some final minor edits on some tables and things like that to make sure that we're on the same page. And at which point I'll be able to consolidate all of the appendices and everything else that we need and get that finalized. I'm hopeful to have the certificate of need ready to resubmit, the application ready to resubmit by the end of next week. And then on the funding piece, congressional directed spending is still on track for the $4 million that we had requested, barring major changes to the federal, the proposed federal budget. Per the CBJ lobbyists, which we had an opportunity to speak with last week. The funding falls within the portion of the federal budget that hopefully will be approved by March 8th, no later than March 8th, unless the feds elect to continue to go with the continuing resolution process. But we're hopeful that we'll have some answers on it sooner than later. The Denali Commission, senior leadership, we've got it on our agenda for next week to discuss what funding opportunities we want to pursue with the Denali Commission. And we anticipate that the application window will open up at some point in February. So we'll be ready for that. And then for the FY25 legislative capital priorities, I went back, we had a chance, a few of us had a chance to sit in on the annual legislative breakfast. Projects were generally discussed. It didn't seem to be a lot of discussion about changing the priorities, the ranking priorities. I also watched the committee of the whole presentation or meeting that took place on the 29th. They didn't make any changes to that either. Right now, we're sitting at the 9th of 21 projects. However, one, I think, really important thing that was specifically discussed at the legislative breakfast was this concept of buckets. Certain projects that the city had on the list would fall into the same bucket, if you will, for, let's say, federal spending. A subcommittee is interested in addressing certain priorities. The city may have had 2 or even 3 projects in some cases that would have fallen within the same bucket. What I'm getting at is if the state or the feds were to identify a priority at their level and wanted to provide funding to support, let's say, healthcare, our project would still be a good candidate, and they may reach to that, even if it's not a higher priority on CBJ's list right now. The rate prioritized FY25 legislative capital priorities list was discussed during the committee of the whole and will flow to the consent agenda for their next assembly meeting. And unless there's any questions, that's all I have for.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
They didn't make a motion to approve of the ranked list at the committee of the whole, but they had mentioned in the meeting that they were ready to finalize it, and they said that they were going to put it on the consent agenda for the next assembly meeting. So I imagine it will be approved as currently prioritized.
Any questions?
On that piece?
Seeing no questions, operational goal setting process.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At our last planning committee meeting, we briefly discussed the process that Ian had provided some direction to our management team, including managers and directors, to start setting operational quality and growth goals at the departmental level, essentially. And I'm happy to announce that this week it was delayed by Snowmageddon, but this week, Tuesday and Thursday, we had 35 department managers, directors present about 100 operational goals to the senior leadership team over the course of 2 consecutive days. So it was a busy 2 days. I think we had an initial debrief afterwards. We're still working on our plans for how we're going to move forward, but I don't want to speak for Ian, but I believe the plan is that we'll meet quarterly to address what our progress is going to look like on those. And I think the important thing in our communications with the committee is really just more not digging into the weeds on what the goals are themselves, but how the process of setting, tracking these operational goals otherwise dovetails in with what our overarching direction is that Ian's providing with our strategic goals and those types of things. And Ian, if you would
Yeah, I
like
would
to
just
weigh in.
add that, the purpose of this exercise was not to give them their specific goals because they know their work better, but for them to help educate us as to their specific goals. Because we had like Chris here, Chris Letterman, he heard a lot because we have a number of other people just listening. He heard a lot in terms of, what are some of the systems he might need to follow. We agree with all these goals. But for the most part, it was on a standardized form, A3, which is part of our lead process. We are now going to set up a time where we can hear the progress, and that's probably the most important aspect of this is the accountability that is being built into that process. And of course, if they complete one goal, we're going to ask them to add another one. So they're always trying to work on improving their goals. I felt it was instructive for me to sit through all of them because you hear a lot of things that are going on in the facilities, what people are concerned about. It was an opportunity for people to, give us that level of information. So I really enjoyed the process of just getting a better understanding of what the organization is dealing with. And some of the things, you also get a sense of who, a lot of work into it, who didn't. I think for the most part, people did a really good job. You know? So I think our next link is not only to, or the next task is not only to make sure that we're holding people accountable, but is linking it back into some of the strategic goals that the planning committee and the whole board had adopted just about a month ago. We'll then make that connection.
Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, but this just sounds so good to me. I'm just, I don't know if I'm woke up more optimistic and positive than usual, but but seriously, this goes.
I think it's because it's sunnier earlier. It's true.
Well,
No, I really appreciate that feedback. I think it's a worthwhile exercise. You know, setting and achieving goals is a practice that we need to be better at. And then holding people is a practice that we need to be better at. And then the timing, the urgency, that was another thing that I was trying to push in. It's the urgency of getting things done. And there was a little time when I was really kind of doing my goose job intimidation. We need to get this stuff done faster because it's so important to our overall. So those are things that leadership has to be good at, and you have to start someplace. Some people are better than others. Some people need that development. But as an organization, we're trying to move it forward. Set goals, get them done, move forward, set goals, get them done.
Just to be clear, just one other thing through the chair, this covered the entire hospital, every single cost center was represented. So you had dietary and EV, you had everybody represented, yeah, Wildflower Court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cafeteria came in with some really interesting things, you know, that how they can track, how they can better track their cost and what's selling, what's not selling, so that they can reduce waste. So, you know, the impetus is great. Operations is a great strategy in and of itself. And I think one of the most important things, if we want to be competitive, we need to be able to do things at a faster, better pace than our competitors. That is a good competitive strategy, faster, better. So, and you have to develop that.
well,
Glad you're positive.
Well, if I could, it's not just that I'm positive, but as I'm sitting and listening to you talk about this, I'm thinking back to conversations I've had with people who are on the front lines who feel like the stuff that goes on at the highest level has nothing to do with that, and they're completely disconnected. That people just sit in their offices and go to meetings. And this does seem, I hope this is a way that you're developing real links to the people who felt that way.
I hope so. We did not tell them what goals and objectives they should have. We just told them how we want to see them. Right? We want them on the A3. We want 3, you know, focus on growth, focus on improvement. Make sure that you have, they're called SMART, but acronym, you know, specific, manageable, accountable, you know, those sorts of things. So we wanted specific dates to them and specific measures. So we're not dictating to them what they need to do in their departments. They're telling us what they want to do. So again, it is meant to draw them out and make that connection a little bit better between us and them.
so I just want to add to that you could use I think you're phrasing with worthwhile exercise, toward the beginning of your piece. But for me, it has and needs to go beyond exercise to be ingrained in the operations of
Right.
Bartlett. And be continuing. I was thinking, you know, as we move forward and as we start the recruitment process for the permanent CEO, we want to make sure that when new leadership comes on, this isn't abandoned.
I would hope not, but it's a practice that everyone needs to be better at, and hopefully whoever that individual is, they can see the value of what it's done, what it will do for the organization over time.
One thing too, and I'm not talking specifics at all. I don't even know specifics as far as operational was, but were you able to see as over 100 different people came in and gave you guys presentations on what their goals are, where they can achieve them, that a lot of their goals kind of crossed over with other departments?
Yes, that was what I was trying to reference with talking about IT, is that, you know, there's a number of things that they were dealing with that also need to be dealt with in terms of IT. So you do start seeing cross-referencing. You do see people saying, I think Chad was here almost the whole time too, from HR. They start learning these connections and understanding what others are dealing with, to the point where they're writing notes like, oh, I can take care of that. I can help them with this. So the learning aspect for senior leadership is so important.
Yeah.
That you start seeing now. We decided to come in groups, and everyone in a group was, it was up to them if they wanted to stay or leave. But I think over time, you'll see more people wanting to stay if the connections are, so they can understand those connections. I don't know if anyone else has any.
Well, we did have a few directors where one of the objectives of the project was they should be doing by themselves.
Right.
We had a few of them that reached out and wanted to, they co-work on projects across departments, and there was some that cross departmental cooperation already happening. We're getting what I'm saying. And so.
You also get a sense of, for example, some people really know their business, and that many people did. Some people are better with numbers, some people are not so good with numbers. Some people they're kind of like to avoid giving a specific date when something is going to get done. So we're writing a memo about the feedback that we want to give them, because again, it's about growth. It's like, could be, we saw some people putting in no dates. We saw some people putting in dates that are so far out that it's irrelevant. But that's the beginning. And I think as we develop, our leaders and managers, they'll get better at it. And that's part of what we need to do in terms of our development, training, and mentoring that group.
Just one follow-up. So I don't want to dwell on this here, but how all the different departments kind of, or some of them, especially IT, like you guys say, because IT is like integral to the whole thing, for the EMR, to all the applications that comes in, and Microsoft. I mean, just everything goes through IT.
Right. So
it's almost like while you're developing the budget, I'm sure that IT really has to have such an important role. I'm glad you said that. You mentioned that too.
Chris and his staff have done, some tremendous work. And I've told Chris, I think the CIO is the hardest job in healthcare, because everyone wants a piece of that. And so we have to get a little bit more around the governance, so people just don't come up and say, I need these 5 things, and it's not part of our strategy, because it makes their work easier. But one of the things that I told them, don't give us a goal that is 90% reliant, 80% or 60% reliant on someone else being able to do it. Do something that you can actually do. And that's really on purpose, to say, don't rely on IT to give you a brand new system. Figure out what you can do in the next 3 weeks or the next 4 weeks to improve your operations. Go there. Because we need some time to get our arms around, what's our IT philosophy, and Chris is working on that. How we're going to do governance, Chris is working on that. How we're going to optimize, Chris is working on that. So give us a little bit of time to come back to the organization, so that we can put their request in a context, but focus on what you can do today. And the easiest thing to say is, I can't do this till I get this IT thing, and that relieves me of responsibility. We didn't want that.
I just have one other comment. What would be, again, Nate and I talked about this, but, we don't want to get, we as a board do not want to get into the weeds of the operational goals, but it would be nice periodically if you, as a senior leadership, after the next round of
Right.
quarterly, to just share with us the successes that you have.
Happy to do that. Happy to do that because the next quarter is the most important. It's because you put on goals doesn't mean you're accomplishing anything. So our ability to accomplish stuff, we will probably, my hope is everyone accomplishes everything, but the reality of that is that it may or may not be. Some of it may be legitimate, some of it may be, they just didn't work on it. So that's going to be the important thing, is the accountability that everyone talks about. That's where we first start. You told me you could get this done. I didn't tell you what to do. You told me what you needed to do to get it done. And again, that'll be a time where you don't want to be punitive, but you want to help people understand the importance of it. Because again, you want people practicing these behaviors of, I said I'm going to do it, I did it.
I'll just add, I think when we talked afterwards and debriefed as a senior leadership team, we also identified, Joe's gonna help us with this, that while there was goals and really good goals set forth, there wasn't very many numbers attached to those goals. And so really making sure that when we kind of refine this process, that we help each director understand the difference between saying, oh, well, my department brings in, $700,000, but then making sure that they understand what's taken out of that to actually see what the true revenue or net revenue is of that. So as we move forward, Joe's gonna
Education.
do some
Yeah,
education.
it was instructive to us to figure out where some of their developmental needs are.
Thanks for that. Next, if there are no other questions, let's move on to project updates.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we updated our format a little to reflect more of what Nate Rumsey was doing with his prior updates. And so for each project, we've listed the latest construction contract amount, or if it's in design, we'll put the latest construction estimate that we have from the consultant at the time. We'll also give you the total project cost and the current phase of the project and % complete. So you can still read all the narrative if you want, but if you want a quick glance, this will help you get through the updates faster. We have 4 that are still in closeout. We're moving into the warranty items on the behavioral health list. So we're getting pretty close to closing that out. Campus door upgrades, the building department was on site today, and they are likely coming back tomorrow for one final inspection on that project. And the chiller number 2, that's still waiting for some owner training and one punch list item. And we've been putting some pressure on that contractor to close it up. Underground fuel line replacement, the temporary fuel system is in place and they're kind of on hold for the rest of the work until spring when the ground thaws. That's moving along. CT scanners, MRI, we didn't make the substantial completion date of January 29th. We did this report on the 25th with the snow and everything. And there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen with the final installation with the techs and everything. So that's probably going to be more like mid-February that the MRI room is going to be ready. Nate gave you a very good update on the ED edition. Ground floor asbestos abatement project. We should be getting the 35% design. We should have it by now, and then getting an estimate for that work by mid-February, so that's right around the corner. We're about to put an RFP out for an assessment for the life safety and fire alarm systems at Wildflower Court. Their system is no longer supported by the current vendor, which I believe is Siemens. So that needs to be replaced and upgraded. And while we're at it, we're going to look at the other interrelated life safety systems such as fire sprinkler. So that should be going out on the street soon to get a consultant on board to do that. And then for the surge protection, the next phase we're going to move forward is cleaning up some of these circuit breaker timings and wiring for this facility. Previously, we had been looking at moving forward with the UPS, uninterruptible power supply source, but we're going to hold on that for a while. But that would have been more of a larger financial commitment of about $1 million. But the circuit breaker phase is going to be more in the range of $300,000 total project cost. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. Ms. Wren, thank you. That was very thorough. And I appreciate the format that you presented.
Yeah. Credit to Nate for the inspiration.
It's a group effort, gee.
Thanks.
Thank
you. We have, is that it for our agenda? Okay. Are there any committee comments, questions? Well, I have a comment I'd like the committee to entertain. We have reached a sort of a plateau, I guess, or whatever, leveling out, where we're only 30 minutes in. We're providing updates. We're at a point until we ramp up with some of our projects that we probably don't need to meet every month, that we could probably ask Nate and or Ian just to update us on those projects during the board meetings, and meet every other month, if it will work, and until we start ramping up, until we get back to the strategic planning process, until say the EV project ramps up again, where we might need to start meeting. I don't know what, Al, James?
Madam Chair, that sounds very sensible to me. Like a good use of better use of our time.
Okay. James, are you, does that work for you as well? You are muted if you are trying to speak.
Yes, that works for me. That's great.
Okay, perfect. So the next, let's do that, and we can discuss it at the April meeting. We'll skip March, which I'm very thankful for. That wasn't the reason. I just, if we hadn't done it, asked to move the meeting, this year, I said I was gonna do it last year and I wasn't able to, but this year I am going to be snow machining up the Yentna River.
Oh,
trying to
nice.
watch the Iditarod. So, and that falls on the first Saturday of March every year. So thank you all for
That's cool.
So the next meeting will be April. If it works for April 5th, my birthday. If that works for, how does that work for you?
I have nothing down for the.
Okay.
April yet.
James, does that work for you as well?
Yeah, that's great. Fine.
Okay,
Let me know if you have a favorite dessert.
Sharon's good. Desserts.
I'm advocating. Would you really like carrot cake and ice cream?
Not a huge carrot cake fan. I do make a carrot, huh?
Their cake that you make. Like the only.
Oh.
birthday.
Oh, that's right. I make a
Or
carrot,
chocolate.
I make a carrot cake. That is, and we have. I'm gonna start before I stop talking.
I was just about to move. North Douglas chocolate cake from the.
Oh.
Fiddlehead Cooks. If we're gonna adjourn before we talk about this anymore, I won't do.
No, I just didn't wanna have on the recording